This is the Louie T Network. Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome. You are in the lab room. Of course, I am your host, Louie. Thank you for joining me. This is the NFL Draft Prospects 101, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names of the 2015 NFL Draft. Talking safety. We haven't really talked safety yet in this series. And this is the first one I've talked about. You're surprised because you're expecting me to say Alabama's safety, and I'm not going to do that. This isn't about Landon Collins. This is about Arizona State's Damarious Randall. Now, Damarious Randall is a very intriguing prospect. He's a guy that could sneak in. Shh, don't tell nobody. But this is a guy that can sneak in the back half of the first round. Would not surprise me in the least if he's not only the first safety taken off the board, but the only safety taken in the first round. I don't expect that to happen, but it wouldn't shock me if it did. Let's talk about Arizona State's Damarious Randall and why this is a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on, but he might just end up in the first round. If not first round, definitely coming off the board early second. Let's jump into his pros. Great speed. He showcased the speed at the combine. Blazed like a 4.47, 4.43, 40, somewhere in there. The speed is ever present. You see it, you know it's there, you see it on tape. That's not an issue, and I think teams like that because of the fact that he can jump over the slot, and we'll talk about that. Matter of fact, that's the next pro, so let's go ahead and lump them together. That great speed allows him to drop over the slot. And in this day and age in the National Football League, you like your safeties to be interchangeable. I don't think Damarious Randall is an interchangeable safety. Don't know if you want this guy posing as a strong safety inside the box. Not his strong suit, okay? You want this guy 15, 20, 25 yards away from the line of scrimmage. You want him in zone coverage. You want him man-to-man. He can drop over the slot, give you some man-to-man coverage. Feel good about him because he can run with these guys. You know, the slot receivers aren't getting any slower. They're more shiftier than ever. So you want a safety that you feel good about. And he's a guy that can run with the best of them. And that speed helps him do exactly that. Excellent special teams prowess. I've watched a lot of tape of guys that, and of course, when you draft a player early in the draft, you're not just looking for a guy on the defensive side of football. You're looking for a guy that can contribute on special teams as well. Especially if you don't necessarily get to start right away, I still want you on the roster contributing in some form or fashion. He's the guy that was one of the best special teams players I've seen thus far in the draft. He's one of those guys as a gunner that gets down there immediately. And so he's down there in an instant. He's downing balls at the 2-yard line. He forced a fumble of a guy and then recovered it in another game that I watched. He downed one at the 2-yard line in another game where he had to slap it and stop it from getting in the end zone. He downed about 4 or 5 punts. He is exceptional on special teams. With that kind of speed, you understand why. Solid blitzer. They blitzed him off the edge a couple of times from the slot because, again, I told you he can drop down in the slot. It's not uncommon for him to come over the slot, act as if he's going to cover the slot receiver, take off into the backfield, and you gotta respect him because if you fall asleep, if there's supposed to be a slide in protection and somebody misses the memo, this guy's so fast, he's in the backfield, you don't have a chance to make up for missing that assignment. You can't say, oh, let me get over real quick. No, he's gone. He's already by you. There's nothing you can do about it. So he's a very solid blitzer, sneaky even. So this is a guy that I think there's a number of things that he's going to do well at the next level, and blitzing could be one of them. Instinctive in zone coverage. He's a guy that is very nosy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he's a very nosy safety. He's looking at the quarterback, watching him, and seeing what he wants to do with the football. And if you make a mistake and you don't see Damarious Randall, but he sees you and understands what you're trying to do, He will jump in front of a pass, he will pick it off, and he will go the other way. Saw that a number of times on the tape. Didn't always pick it off, but because of the throws weren't always the best. But when they were on the money and he was where he was supposed to be, he picked it off and took it the other way. So he is a very instinctive safety, looking to be a ball hawk and making plays on the football. Solid form tackler. He's a guy that you feel okay. I won't say comfortable. You feel okay with him being the last line of defense, and I'll explain why you only feel okay with him. But if he's able to break down and you get close enough to him, you're going down. I didn't see him flat out miss too many tackles. If a guy got close enough in his wheelhouse, in close enough proximity, he was able to get him down. He's not a hitter by any stretch of the imagination. He's not a hitter, not laying the lumber on anybody. He's a very small, diminutive guy, around 5'10", 5'11", about 195, 97 pounds. He's not a big guy by any stretch of the imagination, but he will get you on the ground. And look, at this level, that's all that matters. If a guy is breaking loose into the secondary, I just want him on the ground. I don't want a 44-yard pass to turn into a 74-yard touchdown. If you can get him on the ground, get him on the ground, and Damarious Randall does that very well. Let's go to his cons now, and there are some issues here that he's going to have to iron out in order to become a very good pro. You start with takes poor pursuit angles. This one was alarming because the very first tape I put on was Oregon State, and they had a field day at the expense of Damarious Randall. That was an upset early in the season. Oregon State beats Arizona State, and I believe they were ranked 6th in the nation at the time, and they scored about 45, let's call it 38, 45 points, and at least 3 or 4 of those touchdowns were the responsibility of Damarious Randall because he took poor angles to the football. There were 2 running plays where he goes totally to the wrong gap, leaves a gaping hole, running back comes shooting through the gap. He's nowhere to be found because he took a couple of false steps to the wrong gap. Next thing you know, it's a foot race. He can't catch up. It's a touchdown. That happened twice. There's a passing play where his eye discipline on this play was so bad that the quarterback was able to manipulate him, and he was just lost. He was going to the corner route, and the receiver runs a corner post, and he gets back to the inside, and Damarious Randall got left somewhere on the corner, and it was an easy touchdown. And so he struggled in that game. But that was the worst game that I saw from him. But that's something that he has to build upon. He's got to get better at taking better angles to the football, and he's got to get better at his discipline with his eyes. And I talked about him being instinctual as a safety. He can be manipulated. If he's not keeping his eye on the receiver and he's looking at the quarterback, he can be manipulated, and that's something he's also going to have to work on at the next level. Not overly physical. I kind of spoke to that earlier, but let me explain this a little bit more thoroughly. He's not a very physical safety. And when I say not a very physical safety, I really mean he's not physical at all. So, like I said, he's not a hitter. He's a tackler, which is fine. But he's a guy that really doesn't want to get involved in the fray very often. If he sees a couple of teammates struggling with a guy, he's like, y'all got him. I'll just make sure that he doesn't bust loose somehow. You know how sometimes, you get aggressive football players where his teammates are tackling the guy, but he's still kind of on his feet. This guy's going to come in and lay a shoulder and try to drive him back. Damarious Randall, he'll run over to the pile and then, yeah, y'all got it. I ain't going to mess with it. Or he's the type of guy that, he'll run to a play. The running back is still driving for a couple of yards. He won't come aggressively with a vicious shoulder or a vicious attack and try to knock him backwards. He's just around. He's just around. He's not a guy that's going to come in and try to be aggressive at all when it comes to tackling. And that's something that worries me with him, which takes us to our next con. This is the thing that frustrates me with him in space. All right. He missed way too much. Can be eluded in space. He missed way too often in space. This is my biggest issue with him as a tackler. There are too many times where a guy just put a simple in and out move on him and he got lost. He either falls down, he turns around, or he overruns the play. And I mean, if you see how many times he's in a position to make a tackle and he just doesn't because of the amount of airspace between he and the ball carrier, it's insane. I'm like, dude, can you make a tackle? It had to be at least 7 or 8 opportunities for him to make a tackle on a ball carrier with at least 2 yards of space between them. And I don't know if he made a tackle. He might have been 0 for 7, 0 for 8. I mean, it was hard to watch. It was hard to stomach. But when he closes that airspace and he gets in the face of the defender, or excuse me, the ball carrier, he makes the tackle every time. So I just want him to be more aggressive and attack the ball carrier and don't wait, because when he waits, he always misses. And that's something he's going to have to work on. Can be manipulated in coverage. I've already talked about that already. He's a guy that his eyes will lead him to trouble. Those same 2 eyeballs that I'm talking about will make plays for him, but it'll also get him in trouble. And so that's something, again, he's going to have to work on at the next level. Right now, you ask me, there's a lot more good than there is bad with Damarious Randall. You just got to know how to use him, and you got to put him in positions to succeed. If you do that, this is a guy that can come in and help a secondary right away. He's not a strong safety. He is a free safety, and that is that. I think he's got a bright future in front of him if he just works on some of the nuances of his game. That's going to do it for Damarious Randall in his NFL Draft Prospects 101. It happens in the National Football League, whether big or small. We cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. See you in a bit. There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at @InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In the Lab Room. That's In the Lab Room on Facebook and at In the Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.